What's up, everybody? Welcome on back to another episode of Dropkicks and Joysticks. I am your host, Bloody Bill Vox, coming at you live. Well, not really live, but I'm live as I sit here. It's episode 20. It's been a wild ride. Again, like I said last week, I'm surprised I haven't checked out on this yet. My attention span is like that, but I have at least another 5 episodes planned. So I figure we're good for at least 25 here. You know, all bets are off after 25. But last week was WCW versus NWO World Tour. Seemed to be pretty well received from the folks that offered some feedback, whether it was comments or sharing it or directly telling me what they thought of it. So thank you to those of you that are listening on YouTube, and even to those of you on Spotify. I see you there. I see you starting to listen. Seems like there's we're starting to get a few regulars on Spotify. So hello to you. Hello to you over there on Spotify. Yeah, I see you over there. I see you in the analytics. YouTube is the more popular of the two places, maybe because of the video feature, but you know, as I've said before, I don't like listening to a podcast on YouTube. So I like the Spotify option. But anyway, this week, we're going to talk about WWE 13, and we're going to waste no time getting into it again. If you are wondering where the current events talk is, that's now a separate episode within this feed. It's a bonus episode, The Week in Wrestling. The week of November 4th through the 11th just posted. So that's available. And then, of course, it's recorded live every Saturday, typically 10 a.m. That start time is very flexible, but the typical recording day will be Saturdays, and it should be available Spotify and YouTube either by Saturday night, because it's an easy edit, or if I get backed up or with other stuff, it might be a Sunday posting. But if you're looking for current event talks, that's where you can find it. In the most recent week, we talked the latest in the CM Punk rumors, the NXT to CW deal, Samoa Joe dropping the Ring of Honor TV title. Those just a few of the things that were covered. The cocaine spot from the NWA was also covered. So all sorts of fun stuff over there. But over here, we're going to just focus on WWE 13. And right before I sat down to record this, I was like, I don't think I'm really going to need my notes a ton for this one. And, it's got an extensive roster. There's the Attitude Era mode that has 65 different matches. So it's not like I'm going to sit here and read off every single match and roster member. The other thing about it, too, is the Attitude Era, I don't hold it in as high a regard as everybody else does. Now, it did create a lot of stars and whatnot, but when you go back and watch it objectively, it was equal parts trash and it was equal parts gold, in my opinion. But this game covers an era of my life where when it starts, because the official start date, because the Attitude Era mode in this game is basically like a 2-year story mode. So the first match takes place on August 11th, 1997. It was a match on Monday Night Raw, Shawn Michaels and Mankind. And that's where we start our road. And it covers so many pivotal moments that happened between 1997 and 1999. And that was probably some of my peak fandom, outside of the early years where I was a young kid, 6, 7, 8 years old, where I'd say my fandom was even higher, even though I wasn't able to watch pay-per-view. Magazines, posters, merchandise. One of the upcoming episodes closer to Christmas is going to be about, the wrestling Christmas that I got to have. We're just going to kind of relive Christmas, wrestling, the two of them together. That'll be... I think that one will actually, just for kicks, I will actually get posted on Christmas, even though the air day moved to Wednesdays. So technically, I don't think that episode would post until the 27th, but Come on, it's about Christmas. So I gotta post it on Christmas, or maybe even Christmas Eve. Maybe even that Sunday. I can get it recorded ahead of time. But yeah, we'll talk about that another time. But 97 to 99 though is like peak fandom. So I found myself saying, I don't know that I'm going to need my notes a ton here. Like, yeah, we needed to talk about, the ratings and the consoles and the release date and that sort of stuff. And, I'll definitely play on the notes, but I think this will be a little more of a looser episode because much like the 30 years of WrestleMania mode in WWE 2K14, which we covered in a past episode, this Attitude Era mode in WWE 13 ranks up there as one of my all-time favorites in the WWE game series. They've done great Road to WrestleManias. They've done, showcase modes now. But to me, two of the tippy tops are the 30 years of WrestleMania in the Attitude Era mode. In fact, I'd go on a limb and say that WWE 13 kicks off a good at least 4-year span where that mode of that sort was phenomenal. You had WWE 13's Attitude Era. You had WWE 2K14 with the 30 years of WrestleMania. You had, in WWE 2K15, you had the dual showcase, which was Shawn Michaels against Triple H and CM Punk against John Cena. And then in WWE 2K16, the focus was on Stone Cold Steve Austin. And the only reason why I'm not going beyond that is because I don't know what the 2K17 feature was. I can't remember what it was. I remember there was actually download showcase modes that year that you can no longer access, son of a bitch. But I don't remember what the 2K showcase was, and my phone is currently off, and I don't have anything to access internet with. My phone's not off because I didn't pay the bill. My phone's just off because I didn't want people to bother me. To be frankly honest, we were shutting it off for a couple of hours until something starts, when I know some folks that might bother me are going to be occupied. And if they hear this, sorry, it was wigging me out that we were starting with phone calls. I hate the phone. Text me first, baby. Text me, baby. All right, let's do the traditional start of this, and then we'll get into the discussion and see how much of my notes I really rely on here. But WWE 13 came out October 30th, 2012 on the PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360, and the Nintendo Wii. A fun note about that, the Nintendo Wii, is WWE 13 was the last title to be released on the Nintendo Wii until WWE 2K18, which, if I recall, was an absolute disaster of a release because what they had done for the PlayStation, I think 4 and Xbox One at that point, just did not translate well over to the Switch. I might be wrong about that, but if I recall, 2K18 on the Switch was a disaster. In fact, I don't really think WWE games tend to get a Nintendo release anymore. And they don't even do an exclusive game. I wouldn't mind seeing the return of an exclusive Nintendo game if they can't handle what the current 2K games do. But I digress. We're not here to talk about 2K games. THQ and Ukes developed this one. It's the last official THQ WWE game. And I use the term last official with a reason, because WWE 2K14 was something that THQ had started working on before the demise of the company. 2K essentially went over the finish line. They didn't really do the work. We didn't start to see the 2K influence over the series until 2K15, which is when the relationship between Ukes and 2K started to sour, leading to the Ukes, I was about to say they, but Ukes eventually leaving the fold and feeling forced to do so by 2K. And then we got WWE 2K20, that disaster that it was, because Ukes had left the fold. The game had slowly been made into a 2K rinse and recycle type deal, starting with 2K15. But once Ukes was out, oh boy, what a disaster. That's why we don't have a WWE 2K21 in our lineage. They skipped it. That's how bad things were. We had to skip it and do the not much better WWE Battlegrounds or WWE 2K Battlegrounds. Like, it's okay for a hot minute, but it's not great for long. They microtransactioned the living hell out of it, and eventually they had to sell a battle pass to unlock every character because I think people were just like, this is dumb. And we'll talk about Battlegrounds. In fact, I feel like, I'm not positive, but I feel like that's coming up in a future episode very, very soon. I might be wrong about that, but yeah, I'll have to look, but I feel like it's coming. I was about to say, oh, I can look. Nah, not without turning on my phone, damn it. But it was fun to a point, but not for long. But yes, WWE 2K13. WWE 13 was the final game, and it says, thanks to my notes from the SmackDown Hotel on this one, last game to be published by THQ before the company's demise in January 2013, thus ending the WWE THQ relationship after 13 years. I remember when I heard THQ was going under, and all I knew THQ for was wrestling games. And when I heard that 2K had picked up the license for WWE, I didn't really know what to expect because I had played some NBA 2K 11 maybe, or 12 with a friend. It was okay. It had classic controls still available, so, I could still play with the buttons versus the joysticks and all that kind of stuff. I've since adapted to using the joysticks in a lot of cases, but I didn't really know what to expect. But when THQ went under, it was definitely a sad time for me as a wrestling video game fan. I think for a lot of wrestling video game fans, it was a sad time, and I think we all had high hopes with Ukes and THQ being involved with the AEW game, but we kind of saw how that all turned out. But it was definitely sad that after, let's see, it was like not even 3 months after this game came out, THQ was under. So we knew that 2K14 was not going to be a full-on THQ title. THQ had done a lot of the work, and it's evident when you play the game, too. It might be slapped with the 2K logo, and 2K might get credit for it, but let's be real. It's got the THQ fingerprint all over it because the game completely changes the next year with WWE 2K15. And play those two games side by side and tell me they aren't two totally different games. And it's been my opinion, and I shared this during the 2K20 episode, that starting with 2K15, that game, outside of different features and things that they would do off to the side, but at its core, it became the same game year over year over year over year with no real improvements or changes or anything to really keep you hooked beyond a few months. Whereas THQ made games that people still 20 years later are playing and streaming and modding and paying tribute to and all of that stuff. So, I don't think there's going to be many in the 2K lineage other than 2K14 that in 20 years people are still going to be picking up and playing. You don't even see a lot of it now. Like, I think there's some love in there for some of the 2K titles. Like, I know 2K19 gets a lot of love, but funny enough, that was the title that made me check out, because I had felt at that point that it was a rinse and repeat game. And yeah, 2K19 was great in a lot of respects, but for me, it was my checkout point. I was done. As I had shared previously, 2K20 was the very first time that I did not pre-order a WWE game as an adult. And I waited until it was $30 for the entire thing. Score. Big old score for me. So, from a feature standpoint, this game had a lot of different stuff going on with it. They changed a lot of the elements, the audio and the presentation elements. They added mid-air finishers and ring breaking and barricade breaking. And there's lists of all the different situations that you can set it up. But, we had started to see innovation in how people delivered their finishers. Immediately Shawn Michaels giving the super kick to a springboarding Shelton Benjamin comes to mind. CM Punk being RKO'd out of the sky by Randy Orton at WrestleMania 27 comes to mind. In fact, says there are 8 midair finishers that we can use. We got the Codebreaker, the RKO, the Attitude Adjustment, the Go to Sleep, the World's Strongest Slam, the Choke Slam, the Tombstone Pile Driver, and the Super Kick. Of course, the Tombstone Pile Driver, that takes me back to WrestleMania 25, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. A match I yelled so loud during because they had me. They had me so many times. Now I'm snapping to let you know how many times they had me. They had me so many times during that one. But that spot was incredible, and I actually recreated it, sort of, with a guy during a wrestling match. So the place that we were wrestling, there was a rule against drivers. So you couldn't do pile drivers, tiger drivers, anything with the word driver in it was not permitted. So what we did is we did the moonsault spot, and I caught him like I was going to do the tombstone. But then, because he was a smaller guy, so I caught him like I was going to do the tombstone, but then I brought him up to my shoulder like I was going to do a power slam, put him across my shoulders like I was going to do an F5, and then through the beauty of this guy being tiny, I hooked him underneath each armpit and twisted him so that he was in a razor's edge position, and then I gave him the razor's edge, which was a move that I was doing at the time. So, bit of an awkward transition, but that spot was very much inspired by the WrestleMania 25 Shawn Michaels Undertaker spot. I think in my case, I won the match with that one. We may have also made it a near fall. I can't remember. But either way, WWE 13 had the midair finishers. They also, like I said, they added the ring breaking, which you needed to have super heavyweights doing it to each other. So like Big Show and Mark Henry. So this wasn't something anybody could just do. It's not like Rey Mysterio and Shawn Michaels could break the ring. So they made it very lifelike in that respect. So that way it was something that was, what's the word I'm looking for? Or phrase even. Done to death. With some of these other ones, and even the mid-air finisher, they limited it to, what did they say, 8 of them? Yeah, 8 finishers. And so unless you got everybody equipped with those 8 finishers, that's pretty much 8 different guys at a minimum that can do these things. And yeah, sure, they could do, Randy Orton could do a mid-air RKO every single damn match, I suppose. But then what's the fun in that? Use it every time. Notes on the barricade break. You couldn't fight in the crowd even once you broke the barricade. That was a shame. It's always interesting how the fighting in the crowd is always, it's weird. Sometimes you can do it, other times you can't. Sometimes based on your created arena setup, you can do it, other times you can't. I just want to fight in the crowd. I don't even care if the layering is bad and we're just kind of like moving through graphics and shit. I don't care. I mean, it would be awesome if the crowd reacted and they move out of the way as you get close to them. And I'm sure they could do that sort of mechanics. I mean, they do it in like a Grand Theft Auto. So, actually, I'm doubling down on that. I want full-on crowd fighting. Fuck that. If I could be walking down the street with, even just a baseball bat in my hand and GTA, and people on the street are like, oh, no, please don't hurt me. I think we can get some wrestling crowd reactions here where they leave. So, yeah, you know what? No, barricade breaks, fan fighting in general. Let's just do it, okay? Let's just do it. Let's see. We had expanded create an arena in this one, where we could we had more stages we could choose from, thanks to the inclusion of a lot of these Attitude Era arenas. We had some of the stages that were inspired by we could do stuff with the stage, the ring apron, the mat, the different ringside areas, 15 layers for each area, giving you 45 layers of freedom. That's according to the write-up. That's not me in the fancy wording department. You could do custom logos, pre-existing logos. I remember the custom logos in the older games were a pain in the ass because you had to try and make them yourself in the game. It wasn't like you could import and do it like that, like you can do now. Back then, you had to make them in-game. And I actually knew some folks that took the time to painstakingly draw out logos in these games. It was like pixel art. I can't remember which game it was particular, but it was literally like doing pixel art, one drop at a time, to make your logos. But some people would make some cool stuff. My friends would share stuff, and we could see what each other were doing. But when somebody did the block WWF logo, that was mind blowing to me because of how you had to do it. It's not like you could just be like, oh, here's the block logo, let's go. And you can't even really repurpose the redone WWE block logo because the lines are different. The shading is different. Everything's different about it because they're trying to make it say WWE instead of WWF. But I always liked the create an arena in these games, and I love that it's still a thing today. Because I'm no creative whiz. I'm not great at making replicas of old arenas like everybody else is. Like, there are some insane creators out there, whether it's just straight up on the console or on the PC. The creators these days are just incredible. The stuff that these guys can do and they come up with and they conceptualize, and in some cases they got to draw this stuff out to make it happen. and it just blows my mind. But I've always loved Create an Arena because that was always stuff I loved tinkering with, going all the way back to WWF Attitude, which was like the first real expansive Create an Arena. Because I think there was, I can't remember if there was something in Warzone, and we'd talk about that someday, but Attitude was the first real expansive Create an Arena. And I always loved it because we talked about this during the Showdown Legends of Wrestling episode. I'm an arena mark. I love venues. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the character, the design, or whatever, but I love arenas. And in wrestling, I like creating arenas. I may not necessarily create something that resembles something we've seen, but I like to kind of create something that is something I think could be used. When I was doing fantasy warfare content, part of one of the early seasons was I tried out 5 different stages. The lighting sucked in all of them, except for one, so that's the one we went with in the long run. But in this WWE 13, you could choose not only the ring stuff, but I believe this is where we got to start to choose whether we had normal crowds, independent wrestling crowds, big crowd, small crowd, tribute to the troops crowd, outdoor arena, indoor arena, colors to the ramps and all that stuff. We had championship editor in this. I'll admit, I never really was a big create a championship guy, especially because WWE games started to get very good about including retro championships. And as long as you're including the Winged Eagle Championship in a game, I don't need to create anything. But that's another system that I've never really fully understood, and it's gotten more complex over the years, in my opinion, in how to make them and have your design match up with the preloaded plates and all that different stuff. Again, there is some killer creators out there when it comes to the championship belts. So I'm going to admit one more time that I might be I can't even create a championship belt that would be decent for something that could be used. I can't even do that. What I can do is download these championships. So I appreciate all of you. I appreciate all of you. Create a Story was something that used to exist. And in this one, we had over 300 new scenes available for the story designer mode, which allows for branching paths and decision-making by the player. That'd be a fun stream concept at some point in time. Going back into one of these story modes, create a story modes, and doing that. I'm just kind of spitballing here. Because I pair a combination of I'm not a good ground level idea guy. Like if you hand me a piece of paper and say, create something with this blank canvas, maybe I might be able to. But if you bring me this piece of paper and there's the start of something on there and you say, what do you think I should do with this? I'm better at getting an idea if somebody else already has the base. So I'm not the storyteller. I'm the story enhancer. So when it came to these story modes, I never felt like I could do anything good. And I admit I didn't really understand them, and I didn't take the time to understand them. Because in this era of game, much like many of them, my focus was always in the season mode or universe, and whatever feature or showcase was a part of the game. So like in this one, the Attitude Era, 65 matches. And this is in 2012, so I'm working full time. I'm in school at the time, full time. So I know that this Attitude Era took me a long time to do. Now, I went to a midnight release for it. I had me a CM Punk WWE 13 shirt. In fact, it was the first ring spun cotton shirt that I ever had. And if you've worn a ring spun cotton shirt versus a 100% cotton t-shirt, you know there's a difference. Something about the ring spun just feels nicer. In fact, I'm wearing a ring spun Outsiders shirt right now that I got out of a pro wrestling crate. They're a little more form-fitting. I feel like they hug in a certain way. The fabric feels different. And that CM Punk WWE 13 promotional shirt, I think I got it at either Hot Topic or, of all places, Spencer's. It might have been Spencer's Gifts. At the time, CM Punk was still very hot in WWE, and I had a bunch of his shirts. Big time into CM Punk in that time. Still big time into CM Punk. He's not around. But he was still around in this game. In fact, he was a pre-order bonus. Something that I had forgotten about WWE 13. In doing my research for this, I got all the usual notes. But one thing I could not find for the life of me was a comprehensive list about every single match in the Attitude Era mode. So I opened up this case to go into the game and go into the Attitude Era so I can at least try to get an idea. And there was really no easy way of getting this listing because, I recorded a video on my phone. Everywhere online had more info that I needed. But the point I was driving at here about opening the case and him being a pre-order bonus was that I had forgotten that you could redeem for the ice cream bar shirt with this game. And in fact, as an added note, if you still have a PlayStation account and this game, you can still go re-download all the download content. It's another one of those old titles where everything is still available. And you can go out there and you can download all of the stuff that came with it. And this had a pretty good DLC release schedule in terms of the characters. I'm trying to get to my roster listing here, but here we go. I'll go through some of the DLC characters. We had AJ Lee, we had Cesaro, Brian Pillman, Chainsaw Charlie, Damian Sandow. DDP was a Season Pass exclusive. Drew McIntyre. We had Gangrel as an Attitude Era DLC. Goldust was a Season Pass exclusive. Grandmaster Sexay was a part of the DLC. Let's see who else we got. We had the Usos. They were DLC in this. Mike Tyson was a pre-order exclusive. Same thing with that ice cream bar shirt. Natalia was DLC. Rikishi, Ryback, Scotty 2 Hotty, Tensai. The Undertaker in the Ministry of Darkness skin was free. That's pretty cool. Val Venus was in the DLC, and so was Yoshitatsu. Anytime I hear that name, all I can think of is that time that AJ Styles broke his freaking neck with a Styles Clash. But this roster was insanely deep, very heavy on the Attitude Era roster choices, obviously, because the major drawing point, despite it's funny, CM Punk was the cover star for this game, but he was not the focus. The focus was on the Attitude Era mode, and that was where I was getting, talking about the midnight release and playing the game here. We meandered a little bit talking about shirts, but what I was driving at was that Attitude Era mode was 65 matches long. 65 different matches. We span essentially a 2-year period. And while a lot of the different showcases will cover decades in some, this was 2 years of very consistent flow. And I think I got the, oh yeah. So we start with the rise of DX. Let's get into the meat of this, because this is where I spent a lot of my time. Like, yeah, we can create arenas, we can create belts, we could even do universe modes, but the Attitude Era mode was where it was at. And like I said, in 2012 when this came out, I'm working full time, I'm going to school, but I did the midnight release. I grabbed this bad boy, I played a little bit. I took the next day off of work. Or I took that day off of work because the midnight release would have been October 29th into the 30th. So I took the 30th off from work, and I played the hell out of this, but I know that this took up a lot of my time. But I was happy to have it take up a lot of my time. 65 matches from the Attitude Era. You start with the rise of the DX. Then you flow into Austin's rise. And then we flow into the Undertaker and Kane era. And then we flow into the Rise of the Rock, which was called the Great One. We flow into Mankind. We have WrestleMania 15. We even have some off-script stuff where, you can do it in whatever order you want to do it. But the Rise of DX, starts in August of 97. And that story essentially goes, I believe it was all the way to the Montreal Screwjob. Before we start moving on, because it's really after the Montreal Screwjob that we start to see the rise of Stone Cold Steve Austin. So, the rise of DX gave birth to the rise of Steve Austin, because with Bret Hart out of the way, DX was now the top heel, and we needed a babyface. And not only was Austin perfect foil for Vince, he was also perfect foil for DX. So after we go through the rise of DX, we go through the Austin 316 run, which starts in his case with the 1998 Royal Rumble, which was the second of his Royal Rumble wins, because he won it in 97, won it again in 98. He didn't really win it in 99, but he still went to WrestleMania on a technicality. But we started in the 1998 Royal Rumble with Austin in this one, and we take his ride all the way through WrestleMania, and even into the start of his run with Dude Love at the Over the Edge pay-per-view. And along the way throughout these, you get some bonus matches. Like, for example, in this Austin mode, bonus match 15, which is the 15th match overall. You do The Undertaker versus Kane at WrestleMania 14 as well. So, like, you make some stops along the way at other matches that might be related to what you're doing. Same thing with the Unforgiven match with Steve Austin and Dude Love. You do that as part of the Austin story, but you also get the bonus match of doing the Inferno match between The Undertaker and Kane. And so Austin's ride takes us to the, Brothers of Destruction, where, at first they're at war with each other, and then eventually they start to become one with each other and embrace and become partners. But we've got the intertwining stories between, Steve Austin and The Undertaker, Kane, Mankind, Paul Bearer. We got the New Age Outlaws off to the side who are looking to get the tag team titles. But in the midst of all of that going on, off to the side, we've got The Rock starting to emerge as a superstar. So then once you've played through DX, once you've played through Austin, once you've played through the Brothers of Destruction, you start seeing the rise of The Rock, which happens really in like mid-1998, but by the fall of 1998, he's super duper 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 over. The People's Champion, everything. He's gone from die Rocky die to super duper over. Like, I'll admit, 98 Rock, corporate Rock, loved it. Then when we start shilling the elbow and all that stuff in 99, early 2000, whenever that started happening, when he went perma babyface, nah, that wasn't for me. I think heel Rock, now he's entered that territory where I just appreciate him. Same thing with John Cena. Went through my periods where I didn't like either guy, but I appreciate both of them now. But this era, when you start the Rock story, Fall '98, that's we're coming out of Nation Rock. We're into kind of a babyface Rock, but it's really all just a smoke screen because we're gonna repeat the screw job at Survivor Series '98 between The Rock and Mankind, where The Rock joins up with the corporation. That's really where the corporation was born, was the 1998 Survivor Series, which, incredibly enough, does not look to be a part of the overall story. I was double checking in my notes here, but I don't think it was a part of it. Yeah, looks. Yeah, we don't do that one. We go over to Rock Bottom. I bet there's probably video treatment to cover it, I would imagine. But so either way, we get to the rise of the Rock, which takes place at the 1998 Survivor Series, and then we move on to Mankind's. Mankind's run and reign started at the end of 1998. He had been turned into a sympathetic babyface of sorts by being brutalized, essentially. He got brutalized by The Undertaker, he got brutalized by Kane, he got brutalized by the New Age Outlaws, and it just got to the point where everybody started to kind of feel sorry for Mankind. I mean, he even got brutalized by Vince and The Rock at the 1998 Survivor Series. So by late 98, Mankind is becoming an emerging babyface in the World Wrestling Federation. So, after we've done DX's story and Austin and the Brothers of Destruction and The Rock, we move on to Mankind. And we play through a host of Mankind's matches, including the infamous, if you want to change the channel, Mick Foley's going to be winning the title. That'll put some butts in seats. That infamous match from January 4th, 1999. You'll play through that as well. And throughout all of this, too, something that I haven't even mentioned, you are able to, not able to, but with every match, you're unlocking something. So everything you do, it has effect, right? So like, you might unlock an attire, you might unlock a championship, you might unlock an arena. Typically with like the bigger matches at like the Royal Rumble, or if it was like your first time hitting one of these, because like in some of these stories, I think we repeat certain venues. So like if it was your first time hitting, I don't know, Unforgiven, you might get the Unforgiven arena, but then in the next bonus match, you might only get somebody's t-shirt. But unlockables all throughout, like the unlockables screen when I turned the game on to see what matches took place in this, was huge. And the unlockable screens now are still very huge, but with the advent of the accelerators and the option to just unlock everything, it's kind of almost lost the luster. And I'm pretty sure the accelerator passes were available back in this era of game. But now I've noticed that if you buy the season pass and it comes with the accelerator, you don't get the choice anymore. Back in the day, Jesus, this game came out 11 years ago. Back in the day, though, it would ask you if you wanted to use it. And now you don't get that option. But unlockables all throughout this as you play through. But so you play through Mankind's run. Mankind's run was pretty short. by, WrestleMania 15, he's kind of already being factored out of the scene again. And part of that is due to injury and wear and tear. But, he has not a throwaway match, but a weird match with the Big Show at WrestleMania 15, which I'm not even sure if that's a part of the story here, because the WrestleMania stuff picks up at St. Valentine's Day Massacre. So you get a little bit of everybody in the WrestleMania, because we're wrapping up a whole bunch of stories. Now, by 1999, DX is reaching its end. The Undertaker and the Ministry of Darkness is reaching its end. Things kind of not really reaching its end, but it's going to merge with the corporation soon, and then it's going to meet its end. So the WrestleMania chapter is where we kind of really all tie everything up. We do Shane McMahon versus X-Pac, where Triple H ends DX, after swerving everybody into thinking, oh man, China's back in DX. It's all good again. Everything's good. Everything's great. Except it was all a swerve, and Triple H was joining the corporation. So everything concludes at WrestleMania 15. But weirdly, this always struck me as weird, and I was reminded of it when I opened up to see the match listing. The final match that you play is actually from SummerSlam 1997. Bret Hart and The Undertaker. One of my favorite championship matches of all time. But yeah, that's the final match that you play in the main mode. And then there's an off-script mode where it's just a bunch of random stuff, like Kane versus Vader at Over the Edge 98. A random match from Monday Night Raw between the Road Warriors, Godfather, and Mark Henry. A match on Sunday Night Heat where Edge defeated Vader in less than 4 minutes, apparently. Just a bunch of random stuff. You can do it in whatever order you want. There's no, there's no, you must unlock this to get to that kind of deal like there is in the main stuff. So the Attitude Era is, that was the big time feature. Something I kind of forgot to mention earlier, we had special referee matches, which was making a return. We had the I Quit match, which had been redesigned for a more authentic representation. Where you had to actually really make your opponent say I quit. It wasn't just, something happens and it triggers and they say I quit. So redesign there. And then the King of the Ring tournament, which I swear had been around, but maybe the fact that you can make it a different stipulation is what made it unique in this one. But I could have sworn that there was other stuff. But we also had the Inferno match being added here once again, being improved upon. The 500-degree winning system has been changed, removed. I liked that system, though. I liked that you had to turn up the temperature to 500 degrees. I'm just saying. Let's see. Having a title match made a return in this game. The classic blue steel cage was implemented as an alternate. That's a smart move on their part. And yeah, that's the size of it, man. Like, WWE 13, it was like peak fandom for so many people. Like, I think I did this game justice in this discussion in the Attitude Era mode talk alone. Because I was up front in the beginning saying that I spent most of my time in Attitude Era and Universe mode. But I spent most of my time in Attitude Era mode. Hell, I have replayed the Attitude Era mode at least 4 different times. I've done it on streams. I've done it off stream. I love these modes. It's same with the 30 years of WrestleMania in the game that would follow up this one, WWE 2K14. It's a part of the core fandom from when wrestling could do no wrong. And I think we all as wrestling fans remember that period of our life where wrestling could do no wrong. There was no such thing as a bad match or a bad character or bad storyline or a burial or anything silly like that. Partly because the curtain hadn't been pulled, but also because we didn't have that access. These newsletters that have been breaking kayfabe have been around for years. I could have been buying Wrestling Observers in 91 when I was a kid if I wanted to. I believe it was around back then. Dirt sheets and breaking kayfabe's nothing new, but this and 30 years of WrestleMania, they're two different modes, and in other games out there, they represent that era of wrestling where wrestling could do no wrong and everything was great. And nowadays, wrestling can do plenty of wrong, and we're all armchair quarterbacks, and we all have our opinions, and I'm no different than anybody else. I try to only put my energy into the positive things that I like in wrestling, but there are times where things just aggravate me, and I have to play armchair quarterback and say, oh, well, I would have done this and blah blah blah. But the greater point of what I'm getting at here is part of the reason why a mode like the Attitude Era in WWE 13 and others of the like hold such a warm spot with me is because it takes me back to a time when wrestling was simpler. And I know as we get older, things start losing their simplicity. But I liked when it was just, everything was great. Like even as I said at the top of this episode, we look back at the Attitude Era objectively. We could say it's equal parts gold, equal parts trash. But when we were living through it, man, it was something special. It wasn't equal parts gold, equal parts trash. It was all gold all the time. So I think I did it justice, and I hope I did it justice the same way that THQ did this mode serious justice. From the match choices, from the arena treatments, to the roster, to the video treatments, to the music, everything about it is just Nostalgia City. Nostalgia City, baby. Nostalgia City. Before I get into my final review of this game, as we start wrapping things up here, as we've started to do, I'd like to talk a little bit about what was going on in WWE at the time. A couple weeks after this, we had the 2012 Survivor Series. But we also, at the time, we had the debut of The Shield at this Survivor Series, and I was trying to figure out what of significance happened at this particular Survivor Series. And I apologize for a little bit of pausing there. Starting to have some issues with our mobile recorder, and I'm recording this episode on two different sources. But the mobile recorder is starting to be a little bit of a pain in my ass. So it just gave me a if you recall last week, we had a write error message and I left in the son of a bitch. It seems to still be recording after the write error. Last time I stopped the recording completely. So, and it just gave me the write error again. But let's not pay attention to this because the other source is working just fine. We'll chop it all together. But anyway, so when I was looking up what was going on in WWE at the time, I was like, man, what was going on at Survivor Series 2012? So by Survivor Series 2012, CM Punk was a heel. I totally forgot about that. CM Punk was a heel in the WWE. He had aligned with Paul Heyman at this point. And I should have remembered all this because I was at Night of Champions 2012 in Boston when they had that great match. CM Punk wore the Yankees-inspired gear, pissed off the entire city. It was phenomenal. But I was like, oh man, CM Punk was a heel during this. And then on top of that, this is where the Shield debuted. Lights go out, bing, bang, boom, bada bing, bada boom. Shield's debuted, CM Punk still the WWE champion. Turns out CM Punk and Paul Heyman had hired the Shield to be the backup for CM Punk. I don't think they exploited it as well as they could have, in my opinion. But that's just how I feel. But elsewhere on this card, interesting time in the WWE. Tough to be a fan, I think, at the time. Here's what we had going on this card. This is a rough card. I'm gonna tell you. Brodus Clay, Justin Gabriel, Rey Mysterio, Sin Cara, and Tyson Kidd, accompanied by Cameron and Naomi, defeated the primetime players Primo, Epico, and Tensai in a traditional Survivor Series match. Eve Torres defeats Caitlyn by pinfall to retain the Divas Championship. Cesaro defeats R-Truth by pinfall to retain the U.S. Championship. Sheamus defeats the World Heavyweight Champion Big Show by disqualification. Team Ziggler, which consists of Alberto Del Rio, Damian Sandow, David Otunga, Dolph Ziggler, and Wade Barrett, accompanied by Ricardo Rodriguez, defeat the team of Daniel Bryan, Kane, Kofi Kingston, The Miz, and Randy Orton, known collectively as Team Foley. And that was the card. I will say one other note about this game here. It gave life to a rumor. There had long been a rumor that Stone Cold Steve Austin, 10 years ago, was considering coming out of retirement to wrestle a match against against CM Punk. And in the promotional for WWE 13, they teased the ever-living hell out of it. It never happened. I don't know why. But it sure seemed like they were trying to cook something. In fact, there was this interview that played that was very tense and very uncomfortable. But as a wrestling fan, I was very excited. And unfortunately, we never got that. Instead, we got Kevin Owens and Steve Austin. And I don't say that as an instead, like instead. That match, WrestleMania, what's the number? 38? Yes, WrestleMania 38. To me, is an all-time classic spectacle at WrestleMania, so I loved it. But let's go ahead and wrap things up here with the final review, and then we'll get on out of here because my throat apparently wants me to get on out of here. I gotta start, like, drinking more water or something before these because it seems like the only way for my voice to not do the horse thing is for me to essentially yell. And I don't want to yell the whole time. What do I gotta sit? Maybe back way over here and yell the whole time so we avoid being hoarse? I don't want to do that. I would much rather talk softly. But apparently talking softly makes me want to go hoarse. Meh. All right, let's read the final review, give you my final rating. Let's give you the ratings from the other folks. I only have 2 this week, and I know that I only have 2 because I must have gotten distracted because I would not have used Nintendo Power for this one. But anyway, IGN gave this one an 8.4 out of 10. And Game Informer gave it a 9 out of 10. I don't have the score from our grumpy friends over at GameSpot, but I imagine it was probably lower than both of those. But anyway, my final review of WWE 13. WWE 13 is one of the last complete wrestling games to ever be created, in my opinion, and if you're a lover of the Attitude Era, this game easily satisfies the love of that era of wrestling with a 65 total matches featuring the top stars of that era. The roster is a great mix of current stars in 2012 as well as legends from the Monday Night War era. The DLC was plentiful. The arenas covered all the eras. I could spend a bunch of time on a final review, but the simplest review I can give this game is that it is fucking good, and I will always enjoy it. That should be proof. Like, I don't usually include profanity in my final review. I figure I do enough of that off script, but it was appropriate here. Anyway, I don't do top lists, but the Attitude Era mode in WWE 13 is one of my favorite game modes ever done in the WWE game series. If you've never experienced this game, you're robbing yourself of one hell of a time. I haven't checked pricing on this one recently, but it used to go for about 15 to 20 bucks complete, used on the PlayStation 3, and that's well worth the price of admission, considering what it went for new. My final rating, a 9 out of 10. And what it went for new was $59.99 because in a weird twist, when I was rebuying old wrestling games, it will close on a story. Rebuying all my old wrestling games, local game shops, pawn shops, eBay, you name it. We're buying it at all these different places, right? My copy of WWE 13, purchased on eBay. I don't remember where the seller was selling from. They might have even been selling from within my same state. But they left their receipt inside the game. It's $59.99 brand new. They did some sort of trade-in to reduce their price. They had a trade-in credit of $24.99 on the receipt. So they didn't even pay full price. And the game was purchased at the GameStop the next town over. Like, when I was more into going to GameStops, this particular GameStop was like the backup to the regular GameStops in my town. We got one at the mall, and then we got one. It's funny, the two in my city, they're probably less than 10 minutes from each other. But one is in a strip mall, and then the other one is in a mall. And this other GameStop still exists, where this copy of WWE 13 came from. But I thought it was funny, and I don't know, almost small worldish, that somehow, of all the people that could have bought that particular used copy of WWE 13, it happened to be somebody that lived in the next city. Just interesting. But then, we leave our bloopers in, that's right. No blooper cut there. Let's try it again. Take 2, we're live. But on that note, my friends, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here on Dropkicks and Joysticks. It has been fun discussing WWE 13. It was about as loose of an episode as I thought it was going to be, because I really just, I don't know, found this one easy to talk about and just kind of go all over the place. A few different stories, t-shirts, midnight premieres. Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. But next week, the show turns 21. We're old enough to have a drink here on this show. And we're going to talk about a game that could drive you to want to drink. Maybe the worst of these SmackDown vs. Raw games, 2008. Why am I going to talk about SmackDown vs. Raw 2008? I have no clue. To be honest with you, I booked episodes 6 through 25. After I'd chosen the first 5, I was like, I don't want to have to sit down every 5 weeks and pick out episodes. So I picked episodes 6 through 25 a while ago. This is episode 20. So we're talking like months ago I did this. Why am I going to talk about a game that I already say could drive me to want to drink? I don't know. But I know that one time I put it on a stream and I played it, and myself and the viewers were bored beyond words. So I would expect that next week's episode will be a doozy in terms of me complaining. If you don't like episodes that complain, maybe we don't tune in next week. But SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 tried to reinvent the SmackDown vs. Raw wheel, in my opinion, and it struck out big time. But we'll talk about that next week. Until then, if you'd like to follow me on social media, you can do so at Bloody Bill Vox. We got Twitter, X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, Ko-fi, Teespring. And as I always say, if you want to know if I'm on one of these platforms, just search at Bloody Bill Vox. If I'm there, I'm there. And if I'm not, I'm probably not going to be there. And until next week, my friends, have fun out there, stay safe out there, and be happy out there. It's really all we can do, right? All right. Until next week, have a good one, my friends. We'll see you back here next Wednesday, 6 a.m. Eastern, for another new episode of Dropkicks and Joysticks. There's an echo. Crazy.